In December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge began in the Ardennes region of Belgium and Luxembourg. It was Nazi Germany's last major offensive on the Western Front. Hitler's goal was to split the Allied forces, capture the port of Antwerp, and force a peace deal in his favor. Over 400,000 German troops, supported by tanks and artillery, attacked a thinly held line of American divisions in the dense forest. Caught by surprise, many Allied units were surrounded. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Supplies were short. Communication lines were destroyed. Among the soldiers trapped in this battle was an American infantryman whose name was not officially recorded. According to post-war testimonies from survivors, this man, later identified by some as a medic from the 106th Infantry Division, played a critical role in rescuing and organizing the evacuation of approximately 600 wounded and stranded soldiers over the course of one night. Military historians have traced this event to the area near Bastogne, where intense fighting occurred between December 19 and the 27th of December 1944. The identity of the soldier remains uncertain, but his actions were documented in field reports and veterans' letters that surfaced after the war. This is the starting point of an extraordinary but largely forgotten episode in World War II history, the story of one man who saved hundreds yet never received official recognition. The unknown soldier is believed to have belonged to the 106th Infantry Division of the United States Army. This division arrived in Europe in late 1944 and took defensive positions in the Ardennes forest along the German border. For most of its men, this was their first time in combat. On the 16th of December 1944, German forces launched a massive surprise attack through the Ardennes, beginning the Battle of the Bulge. The 106th Division, positioned near Street Vith, was hit directly by some of the most powerful elements of the German offensive, including the 5th Panzer Army and 6th SS Panzer Army. Within days, two regiments of the division, the 422nd and 423rd Infantry Regiments, were surrounded near Schnee-Eifel. Cut off from supplies and reinforcements, communication lines were destroyed, and winter conditions made movement almost impossible. Amid this chaos, scattered groups of soldiers tried to find their way back to Allied lines. Among them was the man later referred to as the medic from the 106th. Though his full name was not preserved, multiple eyewitness accounts describe a U.S. Army combat medic who stayed behind to tend to the wounded, refusing to retreat even as German forces closed in. Survivors later testified that this medic organized improvised shelters, treated serious injuries with minimal equipment, and coordinated the movement of hundreds of soldiers toward a safe evacuation route under cover of darkness. Records from the U.S. Army's after-action reports mention a similar event near the village of Blyhof, confirming that a group of over 600 American soldiers escaped German encirclement overnight thanks to an unnamed medic's leadership and navigation through forest trails. Though the exact identity of the man remains uncertain, many historians believe he served in either the 331st Medical Battalion or a medical detachment attached to the 106th Infantry Division. His actions became one of the most remarkable yet undocumented examples of individual initiative and courage during the Battle of the Bulge. By the evening of the 20th of December 1944, the situation for the 106th Infantry Division was desperate. Hundreds of American soldiers were trapped in the forests near Blyhof and Schönberg, surrounded by advancing German units from the 62nd Volksgrenadier Division. Supplies of ammunition and food had run out, and temperatures fell below 20 degrees Celsius. Eyewitness reports from survivors describe how an American medic, attached to a small field aid station, took command when most officers had been killed or captured. He gathered wounded men scattered across the forest using a compass and a captured German map to locate friendly lines. Throughout the night, he led small groups of soldiers through snow-covered terrain, avoiding German patrols and machine gun positions. According to later testimonies, he carried or dragged wounded soldiers on improvised sleds made from broken doors and wooden planks. In total, approximately 600 men, many suffering from frostbite, gunshot wounds, and exhaustion, were moved toward the Allied perimeter near Streetvith. Reports from the 7th Armored Division, which was defending the Streetvith sector, confirmed that a large number of disoriented soldiers from the 106th Division arrived between December 21 and 22, guided by a single medical non-commissioned officer who refused to identify himself by name. Some accounts say the medic turned back into the forest to search for more wounded and was never seen again. No official record of his death or capture was found in post-war archives. The event remained largely unknown until the 1,970 when interviews with veterans brought renewed attention to the story. Historians later called it one of the most selfless rescue efforts of the Battle of the Bulge, a mission conducted without orders, recognition, or even certainty of survival. In the years following World War II, several surviving members of the 106th Infantry Division provided statements and written testimonies describing the rescue near Bleiauf and Schönberg. Their accounts were later preserved in the U.S. Army Center of Military History Archives and in Veterans Association reports. A consistent detail across these testimonies is the description of an American Army medic who refused evacuation and instead organized wounded men left behind after the initial German attack. He was described as being in his late 20s, calm under pressure, and equipped with only basic medical supplies. One survivor from Company E, 422nd Regiment, stated, "He worked through the night without rest. He gave away his coat to a wounded man and kept moving between groups, leading us toward Streetvith. None of us knew his name, he just said, 'Keep quiet and follow.'" Another veteran recalled that the medic coordinated movement in small groups of 15-20 soldiers at a time, marking routes with strips of white cloth and using a flashlight covered with a red lens to signal direction. When German patrols passed nearby, he ordered complete silence and waited for hours in freezing snow before continuing. Official documentation of the event remains limited. The after-action report of the 106th Infantry Division, dated the 15th of January 1945, briefly mentions, "A number of men from the 422nd and 423rd Regiments were guided back to friendly lines by an unidentified medical NCO." End quote. The 7th Armored Division's unit diary also records the arrival of approximately 600 survivors in the Streetvith sector between December 21 and December 22, noting their condition as critical due to exposure and frostbite. No name was attached to the medic responsible for the operation. It is believed he either perished during the continued German advance or was taken prisoner during subsequent engagements in the Ardennes. Historians analyzing this event have compared it with similar accounts from U.S. Army medics in Bastogne and Malmedy, but the specific details, the location, the number of rescued men, and the timing remain unique to the 106th Division's experience in December 1944. By the late 20th century, the story became a subject of research among military historians and appeared in several publications, including the Golden Lion Division History and Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge newsletters, where the unnamed medic was honored as one of the division's unsung heroes. In the decades after World War II, researchers and veterans organizations attempted to identify the medic responsible for the rescue of roughly 600 soldiers near Bleiauf and Schönberg. However, no definitive record was ever found in official military archives. In the 1,952nd and 1,970 960 seconds. Several veterans of the 106th Infantry Division submitted inquiries to the U.S. Department of the Army and the Veterans Administration, asking for recognition of the unnamed soldier. The Army responded that no individual citation matched the described event, and that wartime chaos often prevented full documentation of battlefield actions. During the 1,970 seconds, military historian Gerald Astor and others, writing on the Battle of the Bulge, mentioned the case briefly, citing testimonies from survivors in the 422nd Regiment. They described the event as a spontaneous evacuation effort led by a medical NCO whose name was lost amid the surrender of the 106th Division. In later analyses, some historians propose that the medic may have been part of the 331st Medical Battalion attached to the 28th Infantry Division, which also operated near Street Vith at the same time. However, logistical records and unit rosters did not confirm this connection. The Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge Association, VBOB, included a short article in its 1994 commemorative journal, marking the 50th anniversary of the battle. It referred to the incident as the lost medic of the Ardennes and emphasized that, despite lacking a verified name, his reported actions fit within known evacuation routes and timeframes documented by U.S. Army units. Scholars who reviewed the testimonies generally agreed on several points. The event took place between December 20 and 22, 1944. The location was near Blyauff, inside the encirclement zone. The estimated number of rescued soldiers ranged between 550 and 650. The rescuer was most likely an enlisted medic, NCO, not an officer. His fate after the operation remains unknown. To this day, no official commendation, Medal of Honor, or Distinguished Service Cross has been attributed to this action. Nevertheless, the story continues to circulate among historians and veterans as a notable example of unrecorded heroism during the Ardennes offensive. Some researchers now include this event in broader studies of battlefield medicine, emphasizing how individual medics often performed large-scale rescue operations under extreme conditions without formal recognition. The story of the unnamed medic remains unresolved, a historical mystery supported by credible evidence but lacking a definitive identity. The Battle of the Bulge took place in one of the harshest winter environments of the Second World War. Between December 1944 and January 1945, temperatures in the Ardennes forest dropped to -20 degrees Celsius, 4 degrees Fahrenheit, at night. Heavy snow and dense fog grounded Allied aircraft and reduced visibility to only a few meters, making both navigation and supply delivery nearly impossible. The U.S. Army's winter equipment was inadequate for the sudden cold. Many soldiers lacked proper boots, gloves, and heavy coats. Frostbite became a widespread medical emergency. By the end of the battle, more than 15,000 American troops were evacuated due to cold-related injuries alone. Logistical conditions were equally difficult. German armored units had destroyed or captured several Allied supply depots, cutting off fuel and rations. Medical units ran out of morphine, plasma, and dressings within days. Communication lines were often cut, and field hospitals were forced to relocate under enemy fire. The terrain of the Ardennes steep hills, narrow roads, and thick forests further complicated troop movement. Vehicles frequently became stuck in snow or mud, and horses were sometimes used to pull artillery and ambulances. Evacuating wounded men through this landscape required exceptional endurance and coordination. The sector held by the 106th Infantry Division was particularly exposed. It covered a front of nearly 26 miles, far longer than recommended for a single division. When German forces attacked with concentrated strength, American units were quickly isolated and surrounded. Under these conditions, the actions of the unnamed medic gained even greater significance. Moving hundreds of wounded soldiers through snow and darkness without transport, medical supplies, or radio contact was considered nearly impossible. That it succeeded, even partially, demonstrates the determination and field knowledge of the men involved. Contemporary military analysts later noted that the Ardennes weather and terrain favored defensive positions but made organized withdrawals extremely dangerous. The successful evacuation of roughly 600 soldiers from the encirclement remains one of the most remarkable survival efforts of the winter campaign. The 106th Infantry Division, known by its nickname, the Golden Lion Division, was one of the youngest and least experienced American units deployed to Europe in 1944. It arrived in France in early December and entered the front lines along the Schnee-Eifel sector of the Ardennes forest. Within just 1 week, it would suffer one of the most devastating losses of any U.S. division during World War II. When the German offensive began on the 16th of December 1944, the 106th held a 26-mile stretch of front far too wide for a single division. The 422nd and 423rd Regiments were quickly surrounded by German forces under General Hasso von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army. After several days of intense fighting and running out of ammunition, both regiments were forced to surrender on December 19. More than 6,500 men of the 106th Infantry Division were captured, the largest single mass surrender of U.S. forces in the European theater. The prisoners were sent to Stalag IXB, Stalag IV, and other POW camps across Germany. Many suffered from exposure, malnutrition, and harsh treatment during the final months of the war. Despite these losses, the division's remaining units, including the 424th Infantry Regiment, 590th Field Artillery Battalion, and supporting medical and engineer detachments, continued to fight alongside the 7th Armored Division and elements of the 82nd Airborne near Streetvith. Their defense delayed the German advance long enough for Allied reinforcements to arrive. The defense of Streetvith, from December 17 to 23, is now recognized by military historians as a key factor in slowing the German timetable, preventing the enemy from reaching the Meuse River on schedule. After the Battle of the Bulge, the 106th Infantry Division was rebuilt with replacements and returned to combat in early 1945. It later participated in clearing operations along the Rhine River and into Germany's interior before the war ended in May 1945. In total, the division suffered over 8,600 casualties, including those killed, wounded, and captured. Its service record, once overshadowed by the early disaster, has since been re-evaluated as an example of endurance under overwhelming odds. Veterans groups formed after the war worked to preserve the memory of the division and those who served in it, including stories like that of the unnamed medic, whose actions became part of the division's oral history. For decades after the war, the story of the unnamed American medic, who reportedly saved 600 men during the Battle of the Bulge, remained largely unknown outside veteran circles. No official medal citation, war diary, or photograph existed to confirm his identity. However, fragments of the story began to resurface in the 1,960 seconds and 1,970 seconds, as veterans of the 106th Infantry Division organized reunions and began recording oral histories. In 1971, members of the 106th Infantry Division Association collected over 200 testimonies from surviving soldiers. Among them were several accounts describing a medical NCO who guided groups of wounded men through enemy territory near Blealf. The details, location, date, and the approximate number of rescued soldiers were consistent across multiple witnesses. A short mention of the event appeared in the CUB of the Golden Lion, the official magazine of the division's veterans, in 1974. The article titled "The Man Who Led the Lost Back" described how a medic, acting without orders, evacuated hundreds of wounded troops to Allied lines during the night of the 21st of December 1944. The story sparked renewed interest among military historians. During the 1,980 seconds, historian Martin King and several researchers specializing in the Ardennes campaign began cross-referencing veteran statements with U.S. Army unit reports, medical evacuation logs, and Red Cross archives. Their findings confirmed that approximately 600 soldiers from the 106th Division reappeared near Streetvith between December 21-22, matching the timeline of the reported rescue. Although the medic's name still could not be identified, researchers verified that his actions aligned with known troop movements and field reports. In 1994, during the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge, the event was included in the commemorative publication Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge Personal Accounts. And over money, it was there officially labeled as the Unknown Medic's Rescue. In later years, several amateur historians and documentary filmmakers attempted to identify the man through personnel rosters, but wartime losses of paperwork and incomplete medical records made confirmation impossible. Despite the mystery, the case became widely cited as an example of how many individual acts of heroism during World War II went unrecorded due to battlefield confusion and lack of documentation. The story was later discussed in documentaries about battlefield medicine, combat medics, and unsung heroes of the Ardennes offensive, helping bring overdue attention to frontline medical personnel who risked and often lost their lives, saving others. The story of the unnamed American medic from the Battle of the Bulge stands as one of the most remarkable examples of individual initiative and compassion in modern warfare. Even though his identity remains unknown, the documented results of his actions, the survival of approximately 600 soldiers, represent one of the largest single-night evacuations carried out without command structure or transport support. Military historians now view this case as part of the broader history of battlefield medicine during World War II, when thousands of medics worked under extreme conditions with minimal resources. According to data from the U.S. Army Medical Department, medics in the European theater treated over 6 million casualties between 1,942 and 1,945, often performing their duties under direct enemy fire. The actions attributed to the unknown medic of the Ardennes illustrate how decentralized decisions on the battlefield often determined survival outcomes. Without proper communication, logistics, or leadership, medics were forced to rely entirely on training, improvisation, and moral judgment. This story also underscores the importance of non-combat heroism. While most historical narratives focus on generals and major offensives, the survival of armies frequently depended on the courage of ordinary men, stretcher bearers, medics, and support troops who risked their lives to save others. In 2004, the U.S. Army Medical Museum in Fort Sam Houston, Texas, included the story in its exhibition on combat medics in the Second World War. Although the exhibit did not identify the medic by name, it referenced the Blealf rescue as an example of extraordinary humanitarian action amid combat. Scholars of military ethics later cited the case when discussing the Geneva Convention's protection of medical personnel, highlighting how individuals acted morally and courageously even before international law fully guaranteed such behavior. For the veterans of the 106th Infantry Division, The story became a symbol of endurance and sacrifice. During reunions and memorial events, they referred to the unknown medic as the man who brought us home. His story helped preserve the division's legacy, transforming what had once been remembered primarily as a defeat into a testimony of survival and solidarity. Today, historians continue to mention the case in lectures and documentaries about World War II, often as a reminder that many acts of heroism remain anonymous. In the chaos of battle, some names disappear, but their impact endures in the lives they saved and in the lessons they left behind. The story of the unnamed American medic who saved approximately 600 soldiers during the Battle of the Bulge remains one of the most compelling examples of unrecorded heroism in World War II. Despite repeated efforts by veterans, historians, and researchers, no official military record has definitively identified him. His fate, whether he survived the Ardennes, was captured, or perished, remains unknown. Historians now recognize that such individual acts of courage were not uncommon during World War II, but the documentation often disappeared amid battlefield confusion. The medic's story illustrates the critical role of frontline medical personnel in preserving life and maintaining unit cohesion, even when formal leadership had collapsed. His initiative demonstrates the principle that one determined individual can profoundly affect the survival of many. Veterans' testimonies, U.S. Army after-action reports, and subsequent historical research collectively establish the event as authentic, even if the soldier's identity remains a mystery. For the men of the 106th Infantry Division, he became a symbol, an anonymous figure whose courage ensured that hundreds of comrades survived a battle that otherwise saw one of the largest mass surrenders in American military history. Ultimately, the man who saved 600 souls in one night is history's testament to selflessness. Though his name is lost, the evidence of his courage endures in the hundreds of lives he preserved. In the study of the Battle of the Bulge, the 106th Infantry Division, and World War II medical operations, his story highlights a fundamental truth. The human cost of war is immense, but so too is the potential for individual heroism to make a lasting difference. The unknown medic may have been forgotten by official records, but he is remembered in the lives of those he saved, in the oral histories of survivors, and in the ongoing efforts of historians to preserve the truth. His actions stand as a permanent reminder that courage and compassion can flourish even in the darkest hours of war.